Welcome back to the Distressed Princess. I'm Rhonda. In today's video, I'm looking on Pinterest to get some inspiration for fall crafting. I can't remember a single one that I didn't like, so I had a hard time picking which ones I might try to recreate. But I really liked this farmer's market sign that was by Knot and Nest Designs, and so I thought I could recreate it using Dollar Tree stuff. So here I have 2 of their brown shiplap plank signs, and I also picked up 4 of their wood slat signs, which these have hangers on them, which I'll have to cut off. But if you can find some of their wood slats like in the package, that would work too. And then 4 of the jumbo craft sticks. So the first step is to remove all the hangers and tags off of everything. Then we're going to glue the 2 boards together using some super glue wood glue, and I get this at the Dollar Tree too. Try to make as thin a line as possible so you don't get a lot of glue oozing out the edges. Then put the 2 boards together. Now this isn't going to be a strong enough hold for it to hang or be a good decoration, so you're going to have to use these large popsicle sticks or jumbo craft sticks, whatever you want to call them, and you'll use the wood glue to glue those to the back like you see me doing here, and that will make the sign more stable. While the main part of the sign is drying, now we need to work on the wood slats. And so the first thing I'm going to need to do is fill in those holes where the hanger was. If you're able to find the wood slats that's in the package at Dollar Tree, of course you can skip this step. And I did have to do a little light sanding to smooth out some of the splintery pieces around where the hangers were. And I used the lightweight spackling that you get at the Dollar Tree, and I just used my fingers to fill in those holes. When the spackle is dry, sand until smooth. Now they're ready for painting, and I'm going to do 2 slats that are white with a gray distressing, and then one slat is going to be an orange color and another slat is going to be a yellow color. And I already had pre-planned what slats and what wording was going to go on each slat, and I wrote it on a piece of notebook paper so I knew I could keep it straight what colors I was painting what and what words I wanted to go what. And I'm going to be using my Cricut to make some decals, so then I knew what color vinyl I wanted to use for each word. So here I was trying to figure out the spacing before I put down the farmer's market decal, and I wanted to leave enough room that I could put something at the top like a bow or something. I really thought I left enough room, but I could have stood to put that farmer's market even a little lower on the sign. And I wanted the vinyl letters to kind of look like they were painted on the sign, so where there are slats for the shiplap, I took my utility knife and I cut through the vinyl and kind of pushed it into those slats so that it looked a little more realistic. And then I used hot glue to attach all the signs to the big sign. I decided to make a messy bow for the top, so I'm using some burlap and some buffalo check ribbon, and in the big size and the small size, and some of this raffia that's really a hula skirt from the Dollar Tree. I got out of frame while I was making the messy bow, but it's really easy. You just cut several pieces of ribbon or burlap and this raffia, and then you crisscross them all at different angles, and then you tie them together with a piece of jute string, or you can use a zip tie. When I tried it on my sign, that's when I realized that I could have stood to make my decal a little lower because the bow was hiding part of it. So I decided I would trim up the bow so that it would fit a little better and my wording wouldn't be so hidden. And I used hot glue to glue it to the top. I used some more jute string to put back through the original hanger holes, and that was it. So I made a couple of mistakes with mine. My bow was too big and my farmer's market isn't quite centered like it should be, but I still am really happy with how my sign turned out, and you guys can take this inspiration and make one too. Pinterest inspiration number 2 is by DIY Beautify, who I believe also has a YouTube channel, and I wanted to recreate her sunflowers. I'm using a placemat that I got from burlapfabric.com, which I'll link in my description box below, but the original creator used a canvas drop cloth. Here I'm measuring out 7.5 inches and I'm marking it on this material. I made a little cut to get it started, and then I ripped the rest of it for a fraying effect. So I know the strips were supposed to be 7.5 inches long, but I didn't know for sure how wide, so I just made mine 2 inches wide. So I'm marking off every 2 inches where I'm going to cut and pull these strips apart. And I also didn't know how many strips I was going to need, so I wound up having to cut some more later. When you get your strips cut and pulled apart, then you will have some loose threads that you will need to pull out. Now you'll need a mason jar lid, both pieces, and it doesn't matter if it's a wide mouth lid or a small mouth. And all you do is tie your strips around the lid. I got about this far and remembered I was supposed to drill a hole. The hole you drill needs to be about the same size as your dowel that you're going to use for a stem. So it needs to be a drill bit that's just a tiny bit smaller than your wooden dowel. It's important that the wooden dowel fits snugly into the lid because it's going to have to hold up this heavy little sunflower. And if it's a little bit wobbly, you might want to use some hot glue or some sort of glue to keep it sturdy. Here's where I also had to cut some more fabric to tie, and then you just continue tying around the wooden dowel. And the more you tie on there and smush them together, the more full your sunflower will look. Now you'll need a contrasting piece of material, and it would be really nice if you had some of that primitive homespun material, which I didn't have any of that. So, and you know me, I like to make do with what I have, and what I have is this same material that I made the flower out of. So I'm cutting it out 5 by 5, 2 pieces, and this is going to go around the inside part of the mason jar lid. And I'm going to turn it into homespun material, sort of. I'm just going to use my ruler and a Sharpie marker, and I'm going to draw some checks on it. Now then, you're going to wrap the inside part of the mason jar lid with that fabric, but you're also going to need some cotton balls or some polyfill, and you're going to make this thing a little bit puffy. Then put the inside part of the lid back inside the outside part of the lid. Now the fitting will be tight because you have all that material wrapped around the outside lid, so you might need some assistance by using some scissors or a hammer to get it put back in there, but if you push hard enough, it will go. And I trimmed off the excess fabric here. Now put more polyfill or cotton balls on the back side, and you'll cover that with your other piece of homespun material. It would probably be easier to cut this piece of material into a circle, but I was afraid that I would cut it too small, and so I didn't want to do that. So I'm just folding in the outside edges and hot gluing and making a circle best I can. And here's how the back side and the front side look. They're both pretty, and so you could actually display either side. Next we'll make some leaves, and I cut out an 8x8 square piece of another material, and you'll see I folded it diagonally, and then I'm going to roll it up, and then I'll tie it in the middle, and that makes kind of like 2 leaves. And I used jute string to make that tie in the middle, and I left the tails long enough that I could tie it around the wooden dowel stem once I got the leaves done. And here I'm tying the leaves on, and if you find that yours is a little bit more floppy than you'd like, because that was my case, just use a little dot of hot glue to secure your leaves to the dowel rod. And the last DIY is not Pinterest inspired because it's an original idea of my own, but I may put it on my Pinterest board so that it can inspire others. I'm using one of the black shiplap planks from the Dollar Tree for this one. And this time, don't remove the hanger, just remove the tag. I'm also using some of the wooden leaves that you get at the Dollar Tree, and a pack of scrapbook paper, but you could use some fall colored napkins because we're going to decoupage these onto the leaves. After I chose my papers, then I cut them down into 5x5 squares. And you could use Mod Podge, but I chose just to use plain white school glue to glue the papers onto the leaves. I spread it out pretty thick and evenly with a paintbrush, and put one of the squares of paper on top. After the glue was dry, then I used a small utility knife to cut out around the leaves. This would be a lot easier and simpler if you had fall napkins that you wanted to use. Then all you'd have to do is sand off the excess napkin. But like I said before, I like to use up what I already have, and I had the scrapbook paper. So if you have any edges that are like jaggedy or sticking too far out away from the leaf, you can just use a nail file to sand those down. Now I'm going to distress the edges of the leaves by using some brown paint and a foam brush, and trying to use a very dry brush technique, so offloading most of that paint before you brush it onto the edges of the leaves. For the top of the sign, I'm using some more of that placemat material from burlapfabric.com, and I'm going to cut a square just for the top. And then I pulled out threads to fray all the edges. I used my clickable stamp set from Michaels to spell out "But fall is the best of all." Next, I hot glued all my leaves in place. And I hot glued down my little fabric sign. I decided to get out my old button collection. I'm going to dig out a few that's going to go around the corners of the little fabric sign I made. And I'm also going to get out some little brown ones to go on the bottoms of my leaves. And here I'm just hot gluing my buttons to the sign. And here I'm going to show you how I made this little jute string bow and button combo. I used my 3 fingers for measuring and wrapped the jute string 2 times around those fingers. So this makes 2 loops, and then you'll have your tails. And you can go ahead and cut your string. Then smoosh the 2 loops down in your fingers, and that creates the bow. But instead of tying it in place with anything, we're just going to put a dot of hot glue on the bottom of the leaf and press down our bow that's not tied. So you have to be careful that it all stays pinched together in your fingers. And then put another dot of hot glue on top of that and put one of your buttons, and that holds it into place. and then just floof out your loops. And that was it. So tell me, do you think that it is Pinterest board worthy? Now let's take a look back at all our Pinterest-inspired fall crafts today. So is everybody ready to start with their fall crafting? I hope you enjoyed these ideas. I'll be off next week, so I will continue my fall crafting when I come back on Friday, August the 11th. But if you want to see more DIY fun, I've linked my fall playlist right here, and I will see you next time. Bye!